I'm going to tell you something. If you two never bother me again the rest of my life, I ain't giving up that shit. I can't. There's good friends of mine out on the say. Well, he's divorced, you have to do his cousin. That's why I said to you before, you don't understand what the money is. Come on to me that the boss is your boss.
All right, and welcome to Mob Talk Radio. If this is your first time here, do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe button. We will be coming back with lives beginning probably this, let's see, it's Saturday now, probably a Monday. Probably Monday night, we're going to do one. I am taking next week off of the podcast to do some other things. But there is some things that I think we should talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this up really quick. All right. In case you guys have been living under a rock, I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. But I've stayed a little quiet on the issue just because I wanted to watch the imbeciles go to work and come up with all of their weird little theories before I said anything. And we're going to talk about it. I don't give a shit who likes the fact that I'm going to talk about it and who doesn't. I could give a fuck. I often have always said I don't talk about current stuff, but I am going to break my rule just this once and talk about it. And I think that for those that listen to my podcast, which may be some of you, I called exactly what happened this week a month ago. I said verbatim, this would happen. I guess I'm psychic. And if you don't believe me, go over to our podcast, mobtalkradioshow.supercast.com, and go ahead and listen to the last 2 or 3 episodes. And I think I mentioned it, that this exact thing would happen. And here we are. And, you know, it's an interesting thing. I always say this, and I will always continue to say this, is that history repeats itself. And over on our podcast, we've begun to discuss the last probably 80 years of Philadelphia's mob history in a way that nobody else ever has. And the thing is, and I'm actually looking for my notes because I actually wrote notes here. I got to pull up my notes really quick. Sorry. All right. You know, history repeats itself, right? And in Philadelphia since the 1890s, Philadelphia has been, especially South Philadelphia, has been an unstable arena for organized crime. And you don't have to look too far or have a whole lot of street intuition to see this for exactly what it is. And it's actually, whether or not you're a student of organized crime, it is a pretty brilliant move. This is incident, which has been widely reported by everybody and their mother at this point, that somebody attempted to burn down Joey Merlino's cheesesteak joint twice. Twice. and understand the Philadelphia mentality, which not many people understand because they're not from there. They haven't hung out there. They don't understand the people, and they don't understand the history of the game. And there's an old saying, men who seize by power with little or no respect for their enemies are eventually toppled by their own men. And I am not by any stretch of the imagination indicating anything, but I'm going to tell you a couple things. This is, in fact, without a shadow of a doubt, an inside job. This is a lateral move by somebody else in South Philly. And it signals what I've been predicting for months since the mob boss came on YouTube. And anybody that listens to my podcast, like I said earlier, knows what I've been saying for months now. And it's finally happening verbatim as I said it would. Like me or hate me, I know what I'm talking about. So you have to go back to the early days of the Mafia with Salvatore Sabella, who was really the first boss, the first gangster. He wasn't the first gangster in South Philly, but he was the first real recognized and most powerful boss in Philadelphia's history. Sabella had his share of problems too. But if you go back and you see that Philadelphia at the time was cut up between the Irish, the Jewish mob, the fringe gangs, the gumballs, other gangs like this, they were all like within a 12 square block radius. And Sabella represented the first Sicilian boss in Philadelphia's history. And what made guys like Russell Buffalino so successful was the fact that everybody within his inner group came from Montedoro, Sicily. And Sicilians, especially the west side of Sicily, they have an entire different mindset than the Neapolitans or the Calabrians or even the eastern side of the island of Sicily. Totally different mindsets. And Sabella was really the first to align Sicilians in the city. And after Sabella, it changed. Even with Luciano taking over the Mafia, guys who were non-Sicilian couldn't even be made. That means Frank Costello, Vito Genovese, Albert Anastasia, Joe Velacci, and others, they were not even allowed to be made until after Luciano takes over in the fall of 1931. That means those guys were all inducted after the fact. Which brings up a very interesting sort of thing with Luciano, but we're not discussing that today. And that was one of the major changes that Luciano brought. And you move past John Avena, who was shot and killed. You move to Bruno, he's shot and killed. And one of the things that Sabella said before he died was that the new crop of gangsters had no clue. They didn't have any bearing or understanding of the traditions, and they didn't know what honor was. And a lot of that's just generational. Being there, growing up in Sicily around it, and then transferring it to South Philadelphia, there is a big difference between being 4 and 5 generations separated from it. It's a different way of thinking. It's not necessarily a better way. I just think it's just traditionally, right? Most men in, like I said, Philly were 3, 4, 5 generations removed from Italy. And they didn't have the acumen or the understanding the old world Sicilians did. And it was just not something you could be taught. That's a large of the reasons why history has repeated itself in South Philadelphia a million fucking times, and it will continue to do so. And most of them aren't even Sicilian to begin with. You know, then you move on to guys like John Stampa, who comes in, and he's from what we would call a zip, and he wants to run it like things back in Italy. And he had no bearing or understanding of the resolve of the younger American Italians who had seen bosses come and go for a hell of a lot less or a hell of a lot more, depending on how you want to categorize it. And there's an old saying that some bosses had become too old and the gangsters needed to be in charge. And I don't think anybody's going to argue that Nicky Scarfa wasn't a gangster. He was, but he was also a fucking nut who within a few short years all but destroyed whatever the hell was left of Philadelphia and whatever Philadelphia had going for itself outside of drugs and gambling. 8th and Christian and 9th and Catherine was Dope Row back in the 20s. It was a one-stop shop for heroin, unions, all of that left. Anything outside of drugs and gambling is gone. And a little loan sharking, let's be honest. So John Stanfa comes in, he thinks he can use brute force, and he was wrong. And he got played at every single turn. But once again, it was, early history repeating itself. It was the wild, wild west. There was no scruples. There was no honor, just everybody grabbing for the fucking tip jar. And Philly hasn't changed since. And around, really since the late 40s. And Sabella was the last great boss and perhaps truly the most successful boss Philadelphia has ever seen. And he was smart enough to retire at age 40 and get the hell out. He saw what was coming behind him, saw what was around him, saw how things were changing. And it was no longer the mafia, as he said, as it was the one he joined. And so there's always this debate, when did the mob die? Well, if you look at the history of South Philadelphia, the mob died in 1940, the late 40s, when Sabella said, fuck it, I'm done. If you're going to use certain parameters to make that statement true or false, depending on what your narrative is. So history is going to repeat itself, and it is right now. And so let me go back to my first sort of point coming out of the gate. Is you might ask, why is this a brilliant move? Well, it serves a million different scenarios. For starters, it brings the feds. They're going to sit on top of Joey now. It has the feds looking into insurance scams, a million different scenarios. And then it brings in allegations of other crime families being involved. It's a designed message to Joey. This is no insurance scam. Anybody that tells you this is, listen, say whatever you want about Joey. He's not a fucking idiot in terms of this. He's not stupid enough, being as out in the open as he is, doing insurance fraud with arson. He's just not going to do it. And some of you say, well, he'll probably pay 5 flunkies to do it and they failed doing it. Now look, well, you can say that, but that's not what this is. This is exactly what it was meant to be. And those assuming this is some fucking local nut or some hobo or somebody who's competing selling cheesesteaks, it's a joke. Anybody that tells you that doesn't know anything, because that's not what this is about. This is a message, and you're a fool if you believe anything otherwise. A cheesesteak war? Are you fucking kidding me? I've heard people say that. That's not what this is. You would know if you knew, but you don't. You just pretend to. And listen, in the past, I've been unwilling to discuss things that I do know about Philadelphia. And I'm not going to change my stance now, but, certain things we're going to talk about. And much has changed, honestly, since the days, since Nicky Scarfo. In fact, reality is between Salvatore Sabella and Angelo Bruno, those were the 2 most successful bosses in Philadelphia. Joe Agambi, who allegedly took over the reins while other people were cooling their heels off in prison, was a great move. And Philadelphia was in a much better position for it. Under Agambi, the drama was to the left and to the right. It was business as usual, and the street level was different. Everything ran smoothly. And you can't say that Philadelphia hasn't really run smooth since the 90s after all of the bullets, because it has. It has been pretty smooth since Stanfa went away and Natali, whatever. But the violence, the mob violence, has all but disappeared under the control of Joey. Okay, so you can't take that away from him. However, the problem is, and this is something you're not going to hear anywhere else, and this is the fucking truth, whether people want to hear it or not. You can say I'm crazy, say whatever you want, but I'm telling you cold, hard facts. The reality is, there are people in Philadelphia who fucking hate Joey, who are just waiting and have been waiting. And the reality is, going on YouTube is seen a certain kind of way on the streets. And more than one person in New York has a term for what he's been doing. Guys in Philadelphia that I'm not going to mention have also said the same thing, but that's on them. It's up to them to say it. And I'm just going to leave it alone. But that's what they say. That's a problem. And that issue he brought onto himself. That's just the truth of it. And it's funny, A lot of people like to point the finger at John Gotti. Say, "Oh, he courted the press." He never really did. He tried to avoid them, but what can you do? I mean, it's like even Al Capone had a problem with it. You know, you're as famous as the headlines make you, and that's true. Could John have sat at home all day? Sure, but who the fuck is going to do that? Nobody. So John went out, had to deal with it. Al Capone went out, had to deal with it. Joey chases them. That's the difference. He courts them. There is a huge difference between minding your fucking business and courting them. Two major differences. You want to be a celebrity, go be a celebrity. You want to be a fucking gangster, be a gangster. You cannot be both. And that, I think anybody will tell you that. You can't be both. You get what you pay for and you get what's coming to you when you do things. Whether or not nobody wants to acknowledge that. Everybody wants to be the attaboy, the bootlicker. I'm not going to be that guy. I don't give a fuck what my past is with him. I'm just telling you the truth. You're asking for problems and consequences when you do shit, right? It's just the nature of it. Good, bad, and indifferent. Good, bad, and indifferent. I'm not sitting here saying I know who did it. I'm not saying that at all. And I couldn't tell you for certain, but I have some really good ideas who did and why and what else is coming down the line. I can tell you that much. My own personal beef aside, I'm setting that aside. My own personal bullshit with him is over here. I'm just speaking facts and knowledge. History repeats itself, especially for those. What's the old saying? Some people are doomed to. I don't know what the fucking quote is. People are doomed to repeat history, whatever the case is. But history always repeats itself, especially if you do not learn from those prior to you. It always does. And this is not some random fucking act. This is not some bumbling jerk off from fucking Kensington, high on angel dust, walking down to the corner store, buying a couple of malt liquor bottles and saying, "Oh, this looks like a good place to start a fire." Twice? Come on. It's not random. This is a calculated move. This is a warning. I mean, granted, it's a little bit comical too, because if you know anything about Philadelphia over the tenure, there has been some certain macabre sort of things that kind of are a tad funny. Remember that shooting on the Schuylkill Expressway where John Staff and his son are getting shot? The van running on the side of the expressway, the door opens, the machine guns come out. There were more bullet holes inside the fucking van than outside of Staffa's car. It means they were fired before the fucking door opened. It's comical to me, but the message got sent. And just because, you know, I can't stand the little cocksucker down there, I'm just going to be honest with you, I can't stand the motherfucker, doesn't mean that I would ever invent, lie, or blab about shit. That's his job. Let him do that. That's not what I'm going to do. Say what you want about me. I'm just not going to do it. But this simply corresponds with truths that I know and the friction that I know about. According to reports, the ATF and the FBI are all over it and have not ruled out organized crime being involved. Listen, you're going to hear all kinds of buffoons come on here and say, "Oh, no. This is a cheesesteak war." How fucking stupid can you be? I've heard people blame Tony Luke. Come on, Tony Luke, get out of here. It's ridiculous. Tony Luke has got restaurants all over the fucking place. Why the fuck is he going to get mad because, Joey wants to buy a fucking dump next to the expressway? You know what I mean? This is organized crime at their best, and this is a beef inside the city. Don't believe me? Keep watching. And everybody's going to say, "Oh, he's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about." But guess what, ass wipes? Go to my podcast a month ago. I think it was about the last 3 weeks. I talked about exactly what would happen. I said someone would set the place on goddamn fire. And they did. They tried twice. Twice. And I said this a month ago. This is going to happen. I said literally, mark my word, that fucking place is going to burn to the fucking ground. It's not psychic ability. It's nothing other than knowing the people, knowing the pulse, and hearing about the friction. And even my haters, if they listen to my podcast, go, damn, he was right on the money. Oh, shit. Certain people have a lot more enemies than they think. And you have to look at a few things, and you'd have to understand the politics down there. You just have to. Listen, you think everybody likes what he's doing? You're out of your fucking mind. There are many that can't stand it. But what are they going to do? That's the reality. People are going to get mad I said that. But that's the truth. And those of you who are sitting on your couch right now saying you're lying, you know deep down I'm telling the truth. You know I am. One thing I've never done is lied about anybody down there, and I'm not going to now. I would not do that. So like I said, you have to understand the politics. You have to understand the people. You'd have to actually know somebody or know various different people to kind of understand how they think and what goes on. And you guys can all say I'm making it up. I'm delusional. I think I'm in the mob. I think I'm this. I'm thinking that. But the reality is like the people that are with me know, and the people down there know. I'm not bullshitting. There's no reason for me to. But the reality is because I'm disliked all of a sudden, doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about. You can hate me all fucking day, but you know I'm right. They're going to deflect now. You watch. They're going to deflect now, and they're going to say all kinds of stupid shit. Oh, he's crazy. He's delusional. But deep down, you know damn well that I know, and you know I'm right. You can clap with the rest of the crowd. But at night, like I said earlier, when you're sitting in that living room, looking at a painting, you know who I'm talking to. You're going to say, motherfucker is right, because you know I am. And it's funny because now I'm getting like dozens and dozens upon dozens of emails from all my listeners saying, how the fuck did you know that was going to happen? Because I know them. I know how they think. I know the mentality. I spent enough time down there. I just know. And you weirdos go, oh, it's a rat move. No, it's not. It's just understanding people. And that's the difference between me and everybody else that does what I do. And so there is heat now, right? And that's the application by design. Heat, pressure. And the higher that goes, the worse it's going to get. This is not a random thing. It's by design, and it's a threefold. Apply pressure, enrage, bring heat, apply pressure, and keep repeating. And what you end up doing is painting a guy in a corner. But the thing is, the caveat to that is you better have a plan for that moment. You better have a plan for that moment. And I think there is. Actually, I got a pretty good idea that there is. I would be like 90% sure that there is. But be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it. And I can envision my little former friend now going, fuck him. He doesn't know shit. I don't. I know more than you know. Because I'm the one guy who's always gotten it right. Especially when it comes to Philly. Where everybody else has laid the dominoes up, I've just come across and blew them all down. It's just the truth. And I'm not saying anything that anybody in South Philadelphia doesn't know. But people outside of that area that don't know anybody there couldn't conceive of this type of shit. It's a cheesesteak war. You fucking kidding me? Who's going to risk going to federal prison over cheesesteaks? You really? Like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But this is just the beginning. And how far it goes is going to be whatever the response is. And to be honest with you, I can't imagine sitting there wondering at night, damn, who the fuck is trying to hurt my business? Who would have the balls to do that and not fear any retribution from you at all? And in that, and I'll repeat it, who would have the balls to do that And who would not fear any retribution from you at all? Because fear is what rules the world in that part of life. Somebody obviously ain't fucking scared of you at all. And in that statement, you will find your answer. Because those who don't fear you will decapitate you in a second once you slip up. Write it down, print it out, hang it on the wall. Mark this down today. Now, don't be surprised if the FBI tries to plan a false flag event with this bullshit too, blaming it, like I said, on some obscure homeless hooker person either, while they tickle the wires and try to get people to talk. And the FBI has 3 ways to go about this. They have fraud and insurance fraud and arson. Okay? Nope. Because listen, if you're going to do insurance fraud, you're going to set the place goddamn, burn it to the goddamn ground. That's the only way you're going to really get a ton of money out of it. But then you use an accelerant on top of it like that, like, I don't know, alcohol. Listen, guys, not for nothing. Joey's not stupid. He's not going to do nothing like that. I may not like the little fuck, but he's not going to do that. He's not that dumb. He's just not that dumb. So I don't believe that to be accurate. Number 2, it's an inside job within his own crime family and an enemy. Or number 3, somebody outside the family who's sending him a message. Of those 3, which one do you think it is? I know. Do you? Is it insurance fraud and arson? I mean, it's definitely arson, but it's not insurance fraud. No way. It's just not even, throw that out the window. Inside job from the family and an enemy? Or somebody outside the family who's sending a message. Nobody from New York is going to risk sending through. First of all, if New York sent anybody, they would bomb the goddamn place. It would be done. The message would be sent. This was done twice. So, I think I know what the answer is. Do you? And there will be some that may say, well, this could have been somebody just to fuck with him or to throw off this or that. Listen, you got to understand Philadelphia history. This is how it starts. This is not about selling cheesesteaks. It's not. But it's a way to apply pressure and get the feds on him to get him off the fucking streets. Put on your fucking thinking caps here. Think like a criminal. What better way to get rid of somebody you don't want around? You don't want to pressure killing nobody. So burn his place to the ground, get the feds all on top of him, and hope that they can somehow try to put him with some sort of weird insurance fraud or whatever the case may be, or find a way to blame him, get him off the fucking streets, then you're going to get what you want. It's not too Machiavellian, but I think everybody can understand it for what it is. This is how it starts. And in parting, let me just say this. And maybe it's advice for who did it, and maybe it's advice for Joey. Same advice for both. Because I know both of you are listening. I know both of you are. To kill a snake, you must chop off its head. That's the only way. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Do me a favor. Please like, share, and subscribe. We will probably be back on Monday, which is Memorial Day, and chopping it up a little bit on Mob Talk Radio. Like I said, my opinion, I happen to be right. I know I'm right, and it is what it is. Nobody else is going to talk about this particular situation in the way that I do because they just don't know. They just don't know. Instead, they would rather rely on bullshit that they just invent off the top of their head. It's a cheesesteak war. It's like the beer wars of the 1920s in Chicago. Fuck out of here. This is what happens there. And if you believe anything else, you're an idiot. And for those that don't like what I have to say, I don't give a fuck. I've never lied about nobody, and I'm not going to. I've always done my research. I always am typically about 90% right. But this is the one thing I know I'm like 98% right about. And we'll see how it goes from here. It's definitely going to be quiet for a little while now. But at some point, something's got to give. And I think we have seen the preemptive move. And they can say it's bullshit, deflect, and say he's crazy. It was some junkie, whatever. Listen, let them say whatever they want. I know the truth. I know what's going on. And everybody else is just sort of making up and inventing their own little scenarios because they don't. It dumbfounds me. Like, nobody's ever read like organized crime history of what people used to do to people. What they used to do to try to incite bullshit on the street, heat on the street to get rid of somebody. And some of you say, who would want to do that? Listen, there's a lot of people that probably would. That's just it. Look at it as a game. Remember we was kids, we played King of the Hill. Guy runs up the hill, everybody else tries to come up and throw you down the hill. That's what this is, but they use bullets. That's the difference. Nobody is above getting shot. The rules, what fucking rules? Because if we go by the rules, then, people shouldn't be online if that's what the rules are. But like I've always said on this show, the rules only apply to those who make them. The most powerful are the ones, the most powerful are the ones that don't have to abide by the rules. They're the ones that can enforce whatever rules they feel like enforcing because they have the power to do it. It's just the truth. This is real street shit, and you're seeing it play out on social media. You're seeing it play out in the news now. Welcome to 2024. I don't fucking recognize any of this. It's crazy to me. But when you want attention, you're going to get it. And it's not always going to be positive. And that's the truth, because Jeff Canarsie says so. We'll see everybody on Monday for a live.